Hey, welcome to another video on sports facts and sport news on Yada Culture. But before we go into the video, make sure you do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. The most admitted story tells that the game was developed in England in the 12th century. In this century, games that resembled football were played on meadows and roads in England. Besides from kicks, the game involved also punches of the ball with the fist. This early form of football was also much more rough and violent than the modern way of playing. An important feature of the forerunners to football was that the game involved plenty of people and took place over large areas in towns. The rampage of these games would cause damage on the town and sometimes death to the participants, and that is as a result of how rough the games were. This would be among the reasons for the proclamations against the game that finally was forbidden for several centuries. But the football-like games would return to the streets of London in the 17th century. It would be forbidden again in 1835, but at this stage the game had been established in the public school. It took, however, a long time until the features of today's football had been taken into practice. For a long time, there was no clear distinction between football and rugby. There were also many variations concerning the size of the ball, the number of players, and the length of a match. The game was often played in schools, and two of the predominant schools were Rugby and Eton. At Rugby, the rules included the possibility to take up the ball with the hands, and the game we today know as rugby has its origin from here. At Eton, on the other hand, the ball was played exclusively with the feet, and this game can be closed as a close predecessor to the modern football. The game in rugby was called the running game, while the game in Eton was called the dribbling game. An attempt to create proper rules for the game was done at a meeting in Cambridge in 1848, but a final solution to all questions of rules was not achieved. Another important event in the history of football came about in 1863 in London, when the first football association was formed in England. It was decided that carrying the ball with the hands wasn't allowed. The meeting also resulted in a standardization of the size and width of the ball. A consequence of the London meeting was that the game was divided into two codes: association football and rugby. The game would, however, continue to develop for a long time, and there was still much flexibility concerning the rules. For one thing, the number of players on the pitch could vary. Neither were uniforms used to distinguish the appearance of the teams. It was also common with players wearing caps. The header was yet to be a part of the game yet. Another important difference at this stage could be noticed between English and Scottish teams. Whereas the English teams preferred to run forward with the ball in the more rugby fashion, the Scottish chose to pass the ball between their players. It would be the Scottish approach that soon became predominant. The sport was at first an entertainment for the British working class. Unprecedented amount of spectators, up to 30,000, would see the big matches in the late 19th century. The game would soon expand by British people who traveled to other parts of the world, and as a result of the British colonization efforts, especially in South America and India, would the interest in football become big. Football clubs have existed since the 15th century, but unorganized and without official status. It is therefore hard to decide which the first football club was. Some historians suggest that it was the football club formed in Edinburgh in 1824. Early clubs were often formed by former school students, and the first of its kind was formed in 1855 in the city of Sheffield. The oldest among professional football clubs is the English club, Notts County. It was formed in the year 1862 and still exists till today. An important step for the emergence of teams was the industrialization that led to large groups of people meeting at places such as factories, pubs, and churches. Football teams were established in the largest cities, and the new railroads could bring them to other cities. In the beginning, football was dominated by public school teams, but later teams consisting by workers would make up the majority. Another change was successfully taking place when some clubs became willing to pay the best players to join their team. This would be the start of a long period of transition, not without friction, in which the game would develop to a professional level. The motivation behind paying players was not only to win more matches. In the 1880s, the interest in the game has moved ahead to a level that tickets were sold to the matches. And finally, in 1885, professional football was legalized, and 3 years later, the Football League was established. During the first season, 12 clubs joined the league, but soon more clubs became interested, and the competition would consequently expand into more divisions. For a long time, the British team would be dominant. After some decades, clubs like Prague, Budapest, and Siena would be the primary contenders to the British dominance. As with many things in history, women were for a long time excluded from participating in games. It was not before the late 19th century that women started to play football. The first official women's game took place in Inverness in 1888. Football Association Challenge Cup, popularly known as the FA Cup, became the first important competition when it was run in 1871. The following year, a match between two national teams was played for the first time. The match that involved England and Scotland ended goalless and was followed by 4,000 people at Hamilton Crescent. 12 years later, in 1883, the first international tournament took place and included four national teams: England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Football was for a long time a British phenomenon, but it gradually spread to other European countries. The first game that took place outside Europe occurred in Argentina in 1867, but it was foreign British workers who were involved and not Argentinian citizens. The Federation Internationale de Football Association FIFA was founded in 1904, and the Foundation Act was signed by representatives from France, Belgium, Denmark, Netherlands, Spain, Sweden, and Switzerland. England and the other British countries did not join FIFA from the start. They had invented the game and saw no reason to subordinate to an association. Still, they joined in the following year but would not partake in the World Cup until 1950. Domestic leagues occurred in many countries. The first was, as already mentioned, the English Football League, which was established in 1888. The leagues would by time expand by more divisions, which were based on team performances. In 1908, would football for the first time be included as an official sport in the Olympic Games. Until the first FIFA World Cup was played in 1930, the Olympic Games football tournament would rank as the most prestigious on a national level. Women football was not added until 1996 in the Olympic Games. As in many other sports, the white male was predominant for a long time. In football, black players started being present relatively early, and in comparison with, for example, tennis, football has traditionally been known as a sport with a mix of black and white players. In Britain, Andrew Watson is known to be the first black player, and he played in the Scottish club Queen's Park in the 1880s. A few other sports show examples of passion to that extent as football. The arenas for football is always flocked by sharing people, and in front of television even more are watching carefully and sometimes with great enthusiasm. Already in the late 19th century, Goodison Park was built in England in purpose of hosting football games. In 1894, the FA Cup final between Notts County and Bolton Wanderers was attended by 37,000 people. A milestone in the development of football stadiums is the construction of the Maracana Stadium in the year of 1950. The imposing stadium in Rio de Janeiro was ready for almost 200,000 people. No other sport has seen stadiums of that capacity built to host its game. There have been two different traditions of fan culture on the arenas: the British and the South American. The British fans adopted the tradition of singing. The repertoire was inspired from pub and walking songs, among other areas. The South Americans, on the other hand, would adopt the carnival style, which included firecrackers and fireworks, and also the modern phenomena of Bengali fires. Fans in other countries have later adopted a mixture of these traditions. No other sport event besides the Summer Olympic Games can today measure itself with the FIFA World Cup. The first edition of the FIFA World Cup was played in 1930 in Uruguay and has since then returned every 4 years. And with the exception due to the Second World War, In 1991, the first World Cup for women was held in China, and since then also returned in every 4 years. Today, the biggest global tournament for clubs is the Champions League, which was formerly referred to as the European Cup from the year 1955 to 1991. Just like I stated earlier, in the late 19th century, only a few national football teams existed. England and Scotland had the first active teams that played games against each other in the 1870s. Today, there are 211 national associations included in the Federation Internationally, the Football Association FIFA, the world governing body of the sport. Another proof of the globalization could be seen in the increase of nations participating in the World Cup qualifiers from 32 in 1934 to over 200 in 2014. The world regions have been divided into six confederations: Confederation Africaine de Football, CAF, which is for Africa; Asian Football Confederation, AFC, which is for the Asian countries; Union des Associations Européennes de Football, UEFA; the Confederation of North, Central America and Caribbean Association Football, CONCACAF; and the Oceania Football Confederation, OFC, as well as the Confederation Sudamericana de Football, CONMEBOL. Football is definitely a global sport and without comparison the biggest in the world. In most parts of the world, the game is called football, which is the biggest sport in the world. In the United States and Canada, however, soccer is used instead as a distinction from American football. A more formal name sometimes used is association football, but in popular speech, it is either football or soccer. The rules of football regarding equipment, field of play, conduct of participants, and settling of results are built around 17 laws. The International Football Association Board, IFAB, consisting of delegates from FIFA and the four football associations from the United Kingdom, is empowered to amend the laws. Modifications to the laws regarding the size of the ball, field, and goal, as well as the duration of the game, the use of return substitutes, and the use of temporary dismissals may be made for youth, senior, and disabled players and in grassroots or amateur football. The object of football is to maneuver the ball into the opposing team's goal using any part of the body except the hands and arms. The side scoring more goals wins. The ball is spherical, covered with leather or some other suitable material. A game lasts 90 minutes and is divided into two halves. The halftime interval lasts as long as 15 minutes, during which the teams change ends of the field. Additional time may be added to each half by the referee to compensate for stoppages in play, for example, injuries during the playing time or substitution during the playing time. If neither side wins and if a victor must be established, two equal periods of extra time as long as 15 minutes are played. And then, if a winner is still not established, a series of penalty kicks, known as shootouts, may be taken. The game is controlled by a referee who is also the timekeeper, and two assistants who patrol the touchlines or sidelines, signaling when the ball goes out of play and when players are offside. Players wear jerseys with numbers, shirts, and socks that designate the team from whom they are playing. Shoes and shin guards must be worn as well. The two teams must wear identifiable different uniforms, and goalkeepers must be distinguishable from all players and match officials. Free kicks are awarded for fouls or violations of rules. When a free kick is taken, all players of the offending side must be at least 10 yards from the ball. Penalty kicks, introduced in 1891, are awarded for more serious fouls committed inside 1970. Players guilty of a serious foul are given a yellow card caution. A second amendment to the rules came in 1925 when the offside rule was rewritten. Previously, an attacking player, one in the opponent's half of the playing field, was offside if, when the ball player substitutions were introduced in the year 1965, teams have been allowed to field three substitutes since 1995. More recent rule changes have helped increase the tempo, attacking incidents, and amount of effective play in games. The passback rule now prohibits goalkeepers from handling the ball after it is kicked to them by a teammate. Professional fouls, which are deliberately committed to prevent opponents from scoring, are punished by red cards, as is tackling from behind. Players are cautioned for diving to win free kicks or penalties. Time wasting has been addressed by forcing goalkeepers to clear the ball from hand within 6 seconds and by having injured players removed by stretchers from the pitch. Finally, the offside rule was adjusted to allow attackers who were level with the penultimate defender to be onside. The use of video assistant referees (VAR) remains limited in football and is permitted only in cases which the organizer of the event has received written permission from FIFA and has fulfilled all of the requirements FIFA sets out in its implementation assistance and approval program. In cases in which permission is given, video assistance is allowed is final per the laws of the game, and it discourages breaking the flow of games to allow for video. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed our video, make sure you do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time.